The boat made it back to shore. Everyone else was accounted for. But 18-year-old Nolan Wells wasn't. Hours later, his family would learn that the teenager who had left home expecting to spend Independence Day on Mississippi's Gulf Coast had vanished somewhere near Horn Island. By the time search crews found him 2 days later, one question had overtaken every other. What actually happened during those final hours? As investigators worked to reconstruct the timeline, conflicting accounts, missing details, and unanswered questions left Nolan's family searching for answers that, even now, remain incomplete. Because this isn't just the story of a young man who died during a holiday outing. It's the story of why, despite dozens of people being nearby, the truth about his final moments is still under investigation. Before his name appeared in national headlines, Nolan Wells was simply an 18-year-old from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Friends remembered him as athletic and easygoing. He had recently graduated from high school and played football. Like many teenagers celebrating the 4th of July weekend, he was looking forward to spending time with friends on the water. Nothing about that morning suggested it would become the last day of his life. Horn Island, part of Mississippi's Gulf Islands National Seashore, is a popular destination for boaters. Every holiday weekend, groups travel there to swim, relax, and celebrate. For Nolan and the group he was with, the trip was expected to be routine. But before we explain how the day unfolded, there's one detail investigators still haven't fully explained, and it would later become one of the family's biggest questions. Exactly. When did everyone realize Nolan was missing? That question sounds simple. The answer has proven far more complicated. As the hours passed on July 4th, what should have been a carefree holiday slowly turned into an emergency, and another mystery would soon emerge. Why did different descriptions of the day's events begin circulating almost immediately after Nolan disappeared? Those questions would shape everything that followed. According to publicly available information, Nolan traveled with others to Horn Island during the Independence Day holiday. The island sits several miles off Mississippi's coastline and is only accessible by boat. During busy weekends, numerous private boats anchor nearby, while people swim, socialize, and spend the day on the beach. At some point during the outing, Nolan became separated from the group. Exactly how, and under what circumstances, remains part of the ongoing investigation. What is publicly confirmed is that he did not return with the others. Before we continue, remember that detail. Not everyone agrees on exactly how the timeline unfolded once Nolan could no longer be located. As concern grew, emergency responders were notified. Search efforts began involving local agencies and other resources capable of searching both the water and surrounding areas. Searching open water is one of the most difficult tasks investigators face. Currents can move a person significant distances. Visibility is often poor. Witnesses may remember events differently after experiencing stress. Those challenges make building an accurate timeline incredibly difficult. But investigators weren't only trying to determine where Nolan had gone. They also needed to determine what had happened before he disappeared. That distinction would become increasingly important. 2 days later, search crews made the discovery no family ever wants to receive. Nolan's body had been found. His loved ones' hope of bringing him home alive was gone. But their search for answers was only beginning. As condolences poured in across social media and throughout the Ocean Springs community, another conversation began taking shape. Many people assumed the case had already been solved. His family did not. Before we explain why, there's another detail worth remembering. Finding someone answers one question. It doesn't automatically answer how or why they died. That difference would soon become central to the investigation. Authorities continued gathering statements, reviewing timelines, and awaiting forensic findings. Meanwhile, Nolan's family publicly expressed that they still had significant unanswered questions surrounding the events leading to his death. Those concerns eventually led them to seek independent legal representation. That decision marked a turning point. Rather than viewing Nolan's death as a tragedy with obvious explanations, his family began asking whether every available fact had truly been uncovered. Attorney Ben Crump later announced he would represent the Wells family as they sought transparency and accountability during the investigation. The family also requested an independent autopsy, hoping that another forensic review might help answer questions that official findings had not yet resolved. At the same time, they appealed directly to the public.
But I do want to say this. I would hope that any parent who, God forbid, would be in our situation, I would hope that you would do the same thing. I would hope that you would ask for any help, receive any help to get answers, because at the end of the day, that's all we want. We just want to know. We just want to know what happened and why our baby didn't come home.
Anyone who had been at Horn Island that day, anyone with cell phone videos, anyone with photographs, anyone who had seen Nolan during his final hours, they asked those people to come forward. Because sometimes the smallest piece of information, a timestamp, a background image, or a few seconds of video, can become critical evidence. As investigators continued their work, rumors spread online faster than confirmed facts. Some claimed to know exactly what had happened. Others confidently repeated stories that authorities had never verified. The Wells family repeatedly urged people to focus on facts rather than speculation, while continuing to ask anyone with first-hand information to contact investigators. And that's where this story begins to shift, because the evidence investigators have publicly discussed answers some questions. But it also reveals why so many others remain unresolved. By the time Nolan's body was recovered, investigators faced two separate tasks. The first was determining how he died. The second was determining everything that happened before his death. Those are not the same question. Officials confirmed that Nolan disappeared during the 4th of July outing near Horn Island, and that his body was recovered 2 days later after an extensive search. Beyond those facts, investigators released relatively little information while the investigation continued. That lack of detail created a vacuum that was quickly filled with online theories. Some suggested they knew exactly what happened. Others claimed foul play was obvious. But investigators did not publicly confirm those claims. Instead, they continued gathering witness statements, reviewing evidence, and waiting for forensic testing, including the autopsy and toxicology reports. That decision frustrated many people looking for immediate answers, but it reflects how death investigations are often conducted. Medical examiners typically avoid announcing a cause or manner of death until all available evidence has been reviewed. Meanwhile, Nolan's family continued asking a series of specific questions. They wanted a clearer timeline. They wanted to understand exactly when Nolan was last seen. They wanted to know how events unfolded after people realized he could no longer be located. Those questions became even more important after the family announced they had retained attorney Ben Crump and requested an independent autopsy. An independent examination does not automatically mean the official investigation is flawed. Families sometimes request one simply to obtain a second professional opinion or to ensure every possibility is thoroughly examined. The family's legal team also appealed directly to the public for photos and videos taken at Horn Island that day. Why? Because in modern investigations, digital evidence can be as valuable as physical evidence. A time-stamped photo might place someone in a specific location. A short cell phone video could capture people in the background. Even images that appear unrelated can help investigators reconstruct a timeline. By this stage, One of the biggest questions from the beginning had been partially answered. The boat returned. Nolan did not. But why that happened remained under investigation. The biggest shift in the case wasn't a dramatic forensic discovery. It was the realization that the investigation was far from over. When many people first heard about Nolan's death, they assumed authorities had already determined exactly what had happened. That assumption turned out to be premature. Officials made it clear the investigation remained active. The final cause and manner of death had not yet been publicly released. The Wells family continued pressing for transparency while asking the public not to confuse internet rumors with established facts. That changes the way this case should be understood. Instead of asking, "What happened?" the more accurate question is, what can investigators actually prove? That's an important distinction. In today's social media environment, speculation often spreads much faster than verified evidence. A single rumor can be repeated thousands of times before investigators have finished interviewing witnesses or received laboratory results. In Nolan's case, the official investigation, not online commentary, will ultimately determine which facts are supported by evidence and which are not. Until then, many of the questions raised in the opening moments of this video remain exactly that. Questions. Today, the investigation into Nolan Wells' death remains ongoing. Authorities have continued gathering evidence while awaiting or reviewing forensic findings. His family continues seeking answers through both the official investigation and an independent review. At this point, several facts are known. Nolan went to Horn Island with others on July 4. He became separated from the group. He did not return with them. His body was recovered 2 days later. Beyond that, investigators have not publicly released a final determination explaining exactly how he died. For Nolan's family, that uncertainty is one of the hardest parts of this case. Losing a loved one is devastating. Living without complete answers can make that loss even more difficult. If you were present at Horn Island on the 4th of July and captured photos, videos, or information that could assist investigators, authorities, and the family's legal representatives have encouraged anyone with relevant information to come forward. Even evidence that seems insignificant could help investigators establish the timeline more accurately. The hope is that a complete understanding of Nolan's final hours will eventually emerge, not through rumors or assumptions, but through verified evidence. Because this case began with one haunting question: how does a boat return with everyone except one young man? The investigation continues in search of that answer.